because it wasn't the freezer that was causing the pain. It was the belief about myself from that experience that was causing the pain. Hey, amazing souls. I wanted to share an experience or a group of experiences that happened this week that showed me some really important things that I had been hanging on to, really taught me a couple really good lessons. And so I wanted to share this with you in with the purpose of also outlining a framework of how our emotions can be our teachers. Sometimes we feel really victimized either by the circumstances that happen or the emotions that we feel because of something that happens. And a lot of times those can get stuck. Either we really resent the experience or we just re-experience the emotions and we feel like if that thing hadn't have happened, I wouldn't be feeling this way, things like that. And so I wanted to share this with you so that you can recognize some new ways that you can shift out and quickly either bounce back or learn from the experience as the feedback that it's supposed to give to you. A week ago, we were driving home from a trip. We had flown in, got our car, and we're driving back home for several hours. And as I was driving home, it was late at night. The rest of my family was asleep. And so I was just listening to some great audios on the drive and was feeling really good, lots of inspiration, just feeling so supported. Well, when we got home, we earlier in the week, our freezer had gone out, and our niece, who discovered that our freezer was out, she had told us about it, and I said, just save as much of the food as you can into our outside freezer. And so I had come home with this expectation that at least, a good amount of our food had been saved. We had that outside freezer, which had other food in it. And it was all safe and good in that freezer. After we unpacked all our stuff, I just went to go check the freezer, and I found out that the outside freezer was also thawed. It just dropped into my stomach, and I instantly knew what had happened and that it was on me. A couple weeks ago, I had unplugged the outside freezer because it was already below freezing temperatures. We're in Alaska. It's really cold. It was an early cold this year. And so because we were already sub-freezing, I figured, I'll just save some energy, unplug the freezer. The outside temperature will keep it cold. And if it warms up, we're just here. So I'll plug it right back in if it becomes necessary. I had no anticipation that the weather would warm up above freezing, far above freezing, right at the same time that we were gone on this trip. And of course, that wasn't on my mind. I was not thinking about that at all, especially with this other freezer issue that happened while we were gone. I was not even thinking that the outside freezer was still unplugged. So upon coming home, I noticed a few things. Just moments before, and even hours before, I had felt really uplifted. And just with this very quick change of circumstances and feedback, my whole demeanor changed. I no longer felt that I was worthy of that help and support. I was feeling really ashamed that it was my fault we lost all of the food in the freezer. Not even just the food that was lost because of the other fridge going out, but even the food that was saved and was supposed to be preserved outside was all gone now. Everything was gone. And that was my fault. And I just lost it. I went into the room. Of course, I was tired too. I'd been driving for several hours. So I know my emotions were a lot more on the surface anyway. But as I started to process these emotions and observe that distinct change so quickly by just learning one thing, it changed how I was showing up in the world. And so as I was crying through this, and my thoughts turned really negative really quickly, very self-judgmental with just this one thing that happened. And because of such sharp contrast, I was able to almost step out of the experience and observe from the outside what was going on. And letting myself experience what I was experiencing with the thoughts coming up, the emotions coming up, I just took that step back to see, okay, what happened and why. And what I realized was that circumstance allowed me to absorb thoughts that I wouldn't have normally entertained. Whereas before all these things were showing up, I felt hope, I felt peace, I felt encouragement, and then all of a sudden I felt I wasn't worthy of it anymore because I had messed up so bad. I should have known better. Why didn't I think of it before? I should have listened to the intuition to plug it back in, whatever, yada, yada, yada. And so as I let these emotions roll, observing them as feedback to say, why was I reacting so strongly? And why couldn't I hold that space of being loved, that everything was going to be okay? You know, what I had just held moments before was then polar opposite. And as I got deeper and deeper into the emotions, and I was talking them out with my husband too, and he was even providing feedback of like, this seems like a really strong emotional reaction to something that, I mean, yeah, it's really unfortunate, but that doesn't mean that you're a worse person or that that I don't love you or that you aren't loved or aren't appreciated. In fact, he even said thank you so much for getting our family home safely for those hours in the car. And that shouldn't, I mean, this mistake shouldn't override any of that. Getting our family home safely is way more important. And so he was even providing this contrast for me. What I realized through this experience is that my emotions and my sadness and these thoughts that were flooding my mind were showing me that I still believed that when it was clearly my fault, that meant I was no longer worthy of support. Later on in the week, I had another mirroring experience where I didn't know that that was hiding underneath, but I kept feeling these emotions coming up stronger and stronger, and so much grief and feeling alone and feeling so much self-judgment. And when I got to the bottom of it, again, that message came through strong, that I felt that if I was squarely to blame, that I was no longer worthy of receiving help, that I had to do it myself. I had to correct the situation by myself. And it came so strongly because both of these experiences in 1 week, as I dug to the root of the issue, that's the message that was showing. And as soon as I mean, even just feeling it released, I feel more calm and more peaceful. And so our emotions can show us what we're holding on to. And when we get to the root of the issue or the belief that is causing the upset or the shame, specifically the shame, the belief that is causing the shame, that is when things feel lighter, when we release that belief, because we recognize that it's no longer true, and it was that belief that was causing so much of the upset and how we showed up to that experience. Because it wasn't the freezer that was causing the pain. It really wasn't. That was not causing the pain. And you know that because someone else could have that exact same experience and they could laugh about it and think, oh my gosh, like, how ironic is this? Our first freezer dies. We get all the food moved to the other one and the second freezer is unplugged. Like, how ironic is that? And they could laugh about it. So it was not the freezer that was causing the pain. It was the belief about myself from that experience that was causing the pain. And that was so powerful. When we recognize it's not the circumstance that is causing the pain, it is our beliefs about ourselves or the situation that causes the pain. That's when the pain becomes valuable, because it is an alert that something is not working in your belief system. That's the thing that is causing the pain. And if you can follow that trail long enough to discover what is underneath this emotion, and you really do that by listening to the thoughts that are running through your head, that will give you so many clues as to what belief is causing the pain. I realized that this was a moment meant to show me something, because the mistake did not happen when I found it. The mistake had already happened weeks before. I unplugged the freezer weeks ago. And I didn't even discover it until that night. Nothing had actually changed that night. Nothing had happened that day to make it better or worse of a problem. The only thing that changed was my discovery of it. And because I was able to see it that way, the mistake was made long ago. Why didn't I feel the shame then? The actual consequence happened already throughout the week. Why didn't I feel the shame then? The only difference was my discovery of it. What if I had not discovered it for another 2 weeks? It definitely would have been a way grosser mess. But the discovery of it was the trigger for the self-shaming. And that was really eye-opening for me. And once I was able to see it that way, that this was a reflection about how I was treating myself upon any mistake, and this was just a reflection because it had happened several times before, this pattern, even if I wasn't conscious of it. This experience brought it to my conscious attention so that I could recognize the damage it was doing, the absurdity behind it, because it was over something that was so relatively small but seemed huge to me, in a way that it was a gentle teaching moment. And in fact, because I had felt so much support and love just hours and minutes before discovery of what had happened, and feeling that stark contrast, I was able to recognize the lesson more clearly, that this mistake was not a reflection of my character. Because if moments before I could feel so good and so peaceful and so receptive, and then just minutes later feel so opposite, that was a reflection on me and how I was showing up. And another reason why I knew that is because as I was feeling these emotions, as these thoughts were flooding through my head, and as I was expressing some of them to my husband, when I would say them, the emotions would get stronger. I would cry harder when I was pulling these out. And so the whole scenario, having the contrast of feeling really supported and good, then instantly switching into another place, as well as the feedback from my husband, as well as me stepping back and observing all of this, helped to identify where the pain was coming from. The emotions are our teachers. They give us clues of what is going on inside of us. And if it's a really painful emotion, it's worth looking at. Where is the pain coming from? What message is this telling me? What am I still believing about myself, or believing about a scenario, or believing about someone else, or believing in general about like human experience? What am I believing that is causing pain? We can see where we're still stuck, what things we're believing that are causing the pain within us, that experiences will keep showing up to eventually magnify those beliefs so that we can get rid of them. Because if we don't know that they're there, we're just going to keep running them over and over subconsciously. We don't even know. And things can feel really perplexing. Why does this pattern keep happening? Why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep stumbling over this same obstacle? A lot of times, especially when patterns keep showing up, it means that our experience is trying to bring the faulty patterns out in more magnified ways so that we will see them in order to move to something that will serve us better. So I ended up being really grateful for how that played out, because it showed me something that I got to learn how to show up differently for myself. Now that I'm conscious of it, when things show up in a place where I would normally run that pattern of running really strong self-judgment, that's when I get to say, oh, right, this is a chance where I get to practice something new and hold myself in a different space than I would previously. going back to the very beginning where I said emotions can be our teachers or our feedback, and how sometimes we feel victimized by our emotions. I really, really could have played in that space for a long time. I really could have stayed there for a long time and felt like, I'm so stupid. I should have known better. Yada, yada, yada. And I mean, who knows how long it could have gone on? It could have gone on for the next day, for several days, just sitting in that energy, feeling victimized by that situation. And it was just feedback. I really believe that that whole thing happened just to show me that I was hanging on to that negative belief, that I had to prove that I was worthy of being loved. And anytime that I didn't, any time that I messed up, then I wasn't worthy of that love and appreciation or support anymore. When I'm relating to this experience, I can honestly say, thank you for showing me this. It taught me something because it led me to that place where I could see what was going wrong in my subconscious, the message that I had been hanging on to, that belief pattern that needed to be cleaned out. And that experience took me to that place where I could sift through that, find the thing that was causing the pain. When we can learn to see our emotions and our thoughts as feedback to show us where our pain still lies, when you get to the root of the issue and can flip it into a different belief about yourself, or practice a different way of showing up in that situation, install a new belief about yourself. So for example, the belief that felt better to me was, I am still loved even when I mess up. And it sounds so simple, but that wasn't in my operating system. Maybe even consciously I knew it was true, but I didn't feel it. And so then taking that belief to the different level of just knowing it, having it sink into my heart to really believe it and experience it in a new way, that I am loved even as I mess up. So that's the lesson that I wanted to share with you today. That when crazy things happen that seem so out of context, or that just especially just take us by surprise, we can really observe ourselves, observe our reactions and the emotions that are coming up. Like, really pay attention to your thoughts. And they can speak very loudly to where you are, reflecting how you show up to yourself or to a situation. And when we allow it to show us these things, then it can provide a very valuable lesson of how we can shift and show up differently the next time to have a new experience, a different experience, one that is better than the last one. So thank you for allowing me to share this experience with you. I hope that that helps to show a way that when circumstances especially are just like out of the blue going wrong, it's an opportunity for us to see where our programming is going wrong, where the pain still lies that we are feeding into. And when we get to the root of it, you can let it go. And then that belief no longer will cause you pain. And that's how we can learn from our emotions. Even the bad ones are showing us where our pain still lies, so that we can let it go and install something new. There you go. That's the inspiration for today. Until next time.